Alrighty. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Damien Atto with Spider Forensics, and welcome to the next Talking Tech with Vound webinar on eDiscovery technology, past, present, and future. We've muted everyone's microphones, but if you have any questions, go ahead and type those in the chat area, and I will try my best to answer them after we finish the presentation portion of this webinar. So first, a little bit about me. I have a decade of experience in the field of digital forensics and eDiscovery. I started my career out at the National White Collar Crime Center, focusing strictly on digital forensics. I then moved to the corporate sector and worked as a consultant at Access Data and their professional services team, which is where I was really first introduced to the whole field of eDiscovery. And then ultimately last year, I joined Spider Forensics as the Director of Professional Services. So when we think of eDiscovery, most people don't realize that it has been around for a very long time, like really 30 years. With the early technology, I'm talking like pre-2005, there weren't very many options available. And what was available, the features were nothing compared to what we see today in products like Intella and Connect. These products were single user, standalone products. Essentially, the product was installed on one machine and reviewers had to pass the review database from one computer to another. During this time, it wasn't like a single platform that could perform all the functions that you would need in the whole eDiscovery process. You would have your document review software where you would essentially review your documents, but then you'd have to put it into a production tool to get it converted to an image and ultimately spit out a load file, which was also developed in these early years of eDiscovery. The products that were available had no real metadata extraction indexing capabilities, so you couldn't search. You didn't have the metadata available for your filtering. The early products, they were very simple. You had a viewer and you just click through your documents, but they didn't have any of this cool data analytical functionality, and it meant that the review was very inefficient. It was very linear. You had to go from each document in the data set essentially. There was no real searching capabilities, which made it very difficult to find the responsive documents quickly. When it came to metadata, like I said, there was no automatic metadata extraction. So a lot of the times there would be reviewers, paralegals, manually entering the metadata into the database. So they'd be reading through emails and adding in the to, from, CCC fields into the database itself. Now, when it came to coding documents, marking them as responsive, not responsive, privilege, adding issues, notes, etc. There was no real coding controls. So you could essentially enter whatever you wanted, and there was a lot of inconsistencies between the different reviewers. So when it came to redactions, you couldn't do your redactions in the review platform. You had to take that document out of the platform or the software and then do your redactions in an external product, such as Adobe, and then essentially bring it back into the review database, and then ultimately produce it. So when I was consulting in my previous job, I did a lot of migrations from these older technologies, and talking with some of the folks that actually used these early software applications, they would often describe it as the Wild West. There was no controls. You could do essentially whatever you want in regards to coding. So moving forward to 2005 to 2010, this was a huge leap for the whole area of eDiscovery. There was this merge between eDiscovery technology and digital forensics technology. So this gave us the ability to process and index our ESI, all the documents that were found during discovery. It's made it a lot easier from a review standpoint, because we already have all that metadata now extracted. We have the ability to filter the data and also search. Searching, I mean, it's a very simple thing, but it makes your life a lot easier as a reviewer. It also, because the extraction of metadata was automatic and you're looking more at the file metadata rather than, your standard email meta, your to, from, CC, which, you would see in an email. You're looking at things that reviewers never had access to before, created dates, things like that. There was also more efficient workflows developed during this time period. The whole idea of deduplication to remove duplicate documents from a data set. And then the idea of denisting, where you're essentially removing operating system files, software files from the data set, things that have no review value whatsoever. So these were our first kind of data culling workflows that got introduced in eDiscovery. It was also in this time period that Intella was born. I believe it was 2007, maybe 2008, that the first version of Intella was brought to market. So between 2010, 2015, because technology is always advancing, there was a lot more options available as far as data sources. And this meant like data sources grew exponentially. A lot more locations were collected during discovery. So we had different data sources, different data types. There was more usage of email. Then we're getting into the kind of social media age as well. And this created a problem for software vendors. And to overcome this problem, software vendors, they first tackled it with increased processing speeds and indexing speeds, so get your data into the database quicker, which is great. But with more data, reviewers need a way to kind of sift through all that and identify what they're actually needing for whatever case they're working on. So this is when kind of data analytics, so the first versions of data analytics were introduced. We also have the birth of the first technology-assisted review algorithms. These is basically machine learning, where you would teach the system to predict what's relevant, not relevant to your case. These early algorithms, it was a good first step. But it was very efficient. The very first ones, you'd have to code, 30–40% of your data set just to get an accurate prediction on your relevant, non-relevant documents in the rest of the data set. So as you can see on the right side of this slide here, these are some of the data analytical features in Intella. Things like your social graphs, where you can plot out communications between people, significant words. So these are words that pop up in documents most frequently. So I call these 5 years the age of big data, and that the whole idea of big data, it's a lot of people use it as a marketing employee, but it truly was. in those 5 years, from my experience as an analytical consultant in my career, there was so much data compared to what we'd previously seen. It was also during this time period that the first eDiscovery platforms were created. So these platforms were a single application where users could process, review, and produce in a single application, rather than using, a product to process, a product to review, and a product to produce. It's all combined into one. Some eDiscovery software moved to a web-based interface. This was a step forward in the whole collaboration effort. So multiple reviewers could review in the same case at the same time, and it did enable legal teams to collaborate across different office locations, within a region or globally. So a reviewer sitting in Texas could essentially review the same case as someone sitting in New York. Better collaboration amongst the legal teams. So that brings us to the last 5 years. Really, I think the last 5 years have been focused on 4 things. The first, the automation, the whole idea that there are certain tasks in the eDiscovery process that could be automated. In Intella, this is your tasking feature where you can automate keyword searching, some of your data calling, email threading, OCR, etc. The next focus was the review features. So, between 2010, 2015, the focus had been overcoming the problem of big data. So this kind of left or sidelined some of the review features that a lot of people in the market had requested. So these are features, and I just named a few here that are in Intella, but you have auto redaction, or what I call auto redaction, batch review, identifying inclusive, non-inclusive emails in an email thread, and paragraph analysis. And I'll go through briefly these features in the next couple of slides. The next focus was artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, AI, it's the front runner in eDiscovery innovation. So there are continually advances throughout the years, and they've had varying success. And I think the problem is legal folks don't trust the technology, and without that trust, they're not going to use it. But I think that one day we'll get there. And then obviously the next, the focus was file type support. Because eDiscovery technology and forensic technology kind of merged, we have the added benefit in the eDiscovery field that we have support for a lot more file types. And the eDiscovery software has been supporting more and more file types, from chat applications, different internet artifacts. We see that forensics file type support being added into our software. So here are some of the review features, and I only picked a few. So first is the auto redaction feature, which is really cool, and it's something that in my career, a lot of my clients have always asked for a feature like this, where you could essentially search for a word and then have your software automatically redact all those words for you. So in Intella and Connect, in the previewer, you can run a search within a document and then hit the redact all button at the very bottom, and it will redact out every single instance of that word in the document. And this saves you time of having to go through and draw in your redaction rectangles. So next is the whole idea of batch review. I love this whole concept where you're essentially taking a large group of data or documents and batching them together into more manageable chunks and then assigning them out to different reviewers. So if you remember when we were talking about the pre-2005, where someone described it as the Wild West, this kind of solves that issue where people get assigned different batches of documents to review, so they're not all reviewing the same documents and making or changing coding decisions, etc. This is also very good from a project management or a case management standpoint, which is more of like what I do these days. I can see at a glance, okay, how far are we into the review process? So next is email threading, the identification of inclusive, non-inclusive emails, and also emails that are missing from the data set. The email threading technology in Intella is one of the best out there that I've seen. So this screenshot here is of an email thread of communications between a gentleman named Doug Hall and Joe Carpenter. So the emails in blue, these are all your inclusive emails. So inclusive emails are emails that contain all the other emails in the thread or that came before it in the thread. So in the gray are the non-inclusive emails. So these are emails, because they're included in another email in the thread, I don't need to review them. And just by running this email threading feature can reduce down your data set significantly. And this gets into the whole concept of review efficiencies. So next is paragraph analysis, a data analytical feature. When you're adding documents into Intella, it's going to analyze your paragraphs, providing you have that option checked during indexing. And as you go through and review, you can mark a paragraph as seen. And what this does is it grays out that paragraph for if it's encountered anywhere else in the data set. So if you look at this screenshot, you know, I have this paragraph and I can mark it as seen. And there are also 6 other documents in this data set that have that same paragraph. This is actually an email. So that's 6 other documents that I don't have to review the same paragraph. You can also exclude the paragraph from keyword searching. This is very helpful, especially with email. You could take a email signature line and mark it as sin and then exclude it from keyword searching. So if you're trying to run a keyword search for privilege or confidential, you're most likely going to get a lot of hits on your emails because everyone has that line at the bottom of their email signature. So using a feature like this makes your keyword searching more efficient and your review process more efficient, because you're not having to review the same paragraph in different documents over and over and over again. So what do I think about eDiscovery technology in the future? As I put here, the future is uncertain, but what I think is going to happen is there's going to be further merging of digital forensics and eDiscovery technology. So we had that initial merge between 2010, 2015, or really 2005 to 2015. But what I see is, further file type support. But I think in the eDiscovery software, we're going to start seeing the benefits of some of like the application portions that are available in the forensic suites. We already see some of that in Intella on the Insight view, where Intella will automatically extract like Skype, Pigeon, chat clients. But I think more of these application parsers are going to be built into the eDiscovery products. I think there's also going to be a focus on the project management side, the case management side. Currently, I feel that this is an area which could see the greatest improvement. my role these days is more on the case management side, and a lot of the times I'll use another product to handle my case management. But I think that in the next 5 years, there's going to be that built-in project management type functionality into our eDiscovery platforms. I mean, there is to some extent, but I definitely think there's room for improvement. Another area which I think is going to be key in the next 5 years is more automation. There are still areas within the eDiscovery process that can be automated. So it will be exciting to see how that develops. Obviously, automation is a very good thing if you're an eDiscovery practitioner, because it saves you a lot of time. And even for an organization, it's all about workflows and efficiencies. The idea of cutting your costs to perform the discovery process. And I think automation is a way to do that. And then obviously we can't forget about artificial intelligence. Today, it's been more about machine learning rather than true artificial intelligence. But I think in the coming years, it's going to be the first true AI features are going to come out and be able to accurately predict without having to essentially teach the system what you want it to predict.